Hey, welcome back to YT Finance, and this is the channel where I went to business school so you didn't need to, and today we are talking about Nano Dimension's NNDM stock, and the reason for this is because they are about to release their earnings report very soon, and the stock has been uptrending within the last month very heavily, and investors are wondering why. For Nano Dimension, I am excited to tell you all about how institutions and institutional investors are buying up the stock, and I actually really don't know why. We have huge names buying up this stock, so I'm really excited to share that with you. Well, in my personal opinion, right off the bat, this increase in their stock price is actually temporarily unjustified right now. However, this is known as a pre-anticipatory run for NNDM stock. Normally, before a catalyst, which in this case is going to be the earnings report, the stock price tends to trend upwards sometimes. However, after the catalyst, it tends to cool off, even if they actually have a earnings or revenue beat. However, with that being said, if the revenue beat is extraordinary, we could see an actual surge in the NNDM stock price. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. But for more videos like this one, remember to go and smash that like button right now, subscribe if you are new, comment your thoughts down below, and now let's get right into it. So we're going to start off talking about their quarterly earnings data, but I want to highlight the institutional investors and hedge funds that are doubling down and investing more into NNDM stock. If you didn't know, Nano Dimension is a 3D printing additive manufacturer of electronic devices and microelectronics. And this is actually an Israeli-based company that is extremely high risk, high reward, and a very, very, very long-term play, which is why my personal favorite investment for 3D printing is actually ARK's PRNT ETF, where you have a conglomeration of a multitude of fantastic, successful 3D printing stocks, including Nano Dimension. So first, I want to hone in on the institutional backing and the recent institutions that are buying up NNDM stock. If you didn't know, currently the NNDM stock trades for around $3.90. However, analysts, particularly one bullish analyst, thinks that the company is going to be worth $10 per share. And in my personal opinion, that is extremely bullish, and although I can't say whether or not that is going to reach that price target, I would have some doubts. However, institutions are very bullish on this company because companies like JP Morgan Chase & Co. boosted their stake in NNDM stock by around 59%, particularly in the fourth quarter. This means that JP Morgan now owns around 408,846 shares of Nano Dimension stock, which is worth just over $1.5 billion. Likewise, Geode Capital Management LLC also raised their exposure to NNDM stock by around 1.5% in the fourth quarter to where now they own around 315,122 shares, which is worth just under $1.2 million. We also see that the California State Teachers Retirement System actually increased their exposure and allocation to Nano Dimension by 4.3% in the same time period, where now they own around 283,355 shares of NNDM stock, worth just over $1 million. We also see another fantastic institution such as Goldman Sachs, which has increased their exposure to Nano Dimension stock by 36.2% in the fourth quarter, where now they own 265,643 shares, which is worth $1,009,000. Lastly, we see another well-known institution such as Citigroup increase their exposure to Nano Dimension stock by 42.3% for the fourth quarter, where now the company owns Nano Dimension stock worth almost $500,000. So overall, this is very bullish, positive news, but why are they doing this? Well, one potential reason is that they could just trade off of the volatility of the stock price because, again, we are seeing a pre-anticipatory run, even though there is no real reason why the stock price is appreciating right now. Unless you want to own this company for a very long time, then this company is not really going to do much for you. You would be better off investing into VOO or PRNT than you would singly investing into NNDM, unless you truly believe in the underlying fundamentals of this company and you think it's going to pay off in the long term. And if you are that bullish for the company, then be my guest, go on, invest in NNDM stock, just do it very safely because this is a high risk, high reward play. And the reason why I say that is that there are other 3D printing stocks that either rival or even exceed Nano Dimension. Even though Nano Dimension is one of my personal favorite 3D printing stocks, there are other 3D printing stocks that I would rather invest into in the short, medium, and even long term. Unless we're talking about the really long term, then Nano Dimension could prove itself, but right now it's just speculation on our projections. What really sets Nano Dimension apart apart from other additive manufacturing companies is their ability to print electronic devices, particularly their multi-layered circuit boards is a prime example of this. We are also waiting for the entire 3D printing market to continuously appreciate, but luckily for us and for investors in the 3D printing space, such as if you invest into the PRNT ETF, which I am invested into, because I think it's much safer than just investing into Nano Dimension when I could also invest into other 3D printing plays on top of Nano Dimension. But back to the good news. The good news is that the 3D printing market is set to grow at a compounding annual growth rate of around 21% from now until 2028, which is fantastic news. However, specifically for what Nano Dimension is targeting, their printed electronics 3D printing is supposed to be worth around $2.4 billion by 2025. And right now, Nano Dimension's valuation is around $1 billion, but clearly they do not have the revenues to actually back up that valuation. However, I am going to talk about how Nano Dimension is very appealing compared to other 3D printers. Nano Dimension has had a plethora of recent acquisitions, which is going to boost their overall revenues, which is fantastic. They also have very good intellectual property through 106 patent applications, with 18 patents already being granted and solidified, 6 of them coming from their Fabrica acquisition. So clearly they do have proprietary technology that no one else can take from them, and that's what I really like. If I invest into a company, I am investing off of the fundamentals, the business model, and their intellectual property and technology. But how does the company create revenue? Well, they sell their 3D printers, which cost between $350,000 to $500,000 a piece. However, that's not their primary revenue source that they want to establish. What they really want to do is they want to sell those printers initially, and then they want to have reoccurring revenues on a subscription base or a contractual basis where they can actually sell materials, because these printers require special inks to actually work, which means that these companies, once they buy the printers, they will still have to pay Nano Dimension around $50,000 to $100,000 per year per machine just to keep up with the materials of this. However, why would these companies want to buy these machines? Well, these machines grant these customers the ability to print electronic devices on site, which is fantastic for things like prototyping and testing, and Nano Dimension can promise quality and reduce times compared to other 3D printing machines out there, which is a good competitive advantage in my opinion. But let's see Nano Dimension's guidance for their upcoming earnings report. Well, in a previous video, their management announced preliminary results covering the first quarter of the firm's 2021 fiscal year, where they estimated that revenues would come in at around $7 million, which would represent close to 255% upside from what they generated in the year prior. It's also a 420% increase compared to their third quarter results of last year. This means that their overall sales could go up to $10 million for the year, and this would be an increase of around 194% since the full year of 2020. However, on the other hand, analysts currently forecast and project that the business will only generate around $5.5 million worth of revenue, and it would reflect very negatively on investors as well as the overall NNDM stock price if analysts' projections actually came true and they didn't meet that $7 million revenue forecast that management said that they could bring in. On the other hand, given what analysts do anticipate, if the company outperforms this estimate, this could be very positive for the NNDM stock price, but only for the short term. This catalyst will cool off. Now, I do want to mention for this current quarter that is coming up, management has not provided any guidance, but analysts are anticipating a loss of 7 cents per share, which is actually greater than the loss of 2 cents per share from 1 year earlier, which is not really good news. It also wouldn't be surprising to see continued losses for NNDM in the short term or even the medium term until their overall global market starts to expand more. Right now, Nano Dimension as a company has a market cap of around $961.83 million, and if you look at their revenues and profitability, their fundamentals and financials do not align with their current valuation, because their sales have only ranged from around $3 million to around $7 million, and they have a very large net loss, which has ranged from anywhere between $8.4 million to $48.5 million. So why are investors so bullish on this company? Well, investors are more focused on the long-term growth prospects of the company and the amount of cash that they have on hand. They have an extraordinarily strong balance sheet, which we will talk about right now, because they have short-term cash investments and cash equivalents that are worth around $1.39 billion. The company also, on top of that, has no debt. This makes the company extremely safe in terms of the company not being able to go out of business anytime soon. This allows the company to sustain themselves regardless of how long their growth runway is until they actually become a profitable company. So it's basically guaranteed with the amount of cash that they have on hand that Nano Dimension will survive until the company becomes profitable. However, that's at least what the current projections are looking like. So investors think that because the current market cap is trading below the amount of cash and cash equivalents that the company has on hand right now, that it's a good value deal. And technically, they are 100% correct in thinking that. And it makes this company very safe in terms of this company not going out of business because it has no debts. So it can sustain themselves when they actually start generating very good revenues. And we know that this could actually come in after 2025 because we talked about earlier the compounding annual growth rate of the 3D printing market for electronics. However, this does not justify the current stock price appreciation of the NNDM stock for the short term, even though we could use the upcoming earnings report as a good catalyst. So investors really need to pay attention to what management is going to say after this earnings report, as well as what the current earnings report is for this highly speculative play. However, it really depends on how we value NNDM stock. If we value the stock based on their fundamentals and revenue generation, this stock is not a good buying opportunity right now, unless you would want to trade off of the stock if you think that the stock price is going to continuously appreciate in price and surge after their earnings report, if you think that the company is going to drastically overperform what analysts projected for the company. However, on the flip side, if you are investing into the company based off of the value of the amount of cash and or cash equivalents that they have on their balance sheet, I understand that logic, and in that sense, it is a good buying opportunity. So this comes down to how much risk you want to take on, how long you're willing to hold the company, how you calculate the value of the company, because it's not supposed to appreciate in price very well until after 2025, unless something like a short squeeze happens, or a fantastic catalyst comes in, or if they absolutely destroy analysts' projections and they come in with revenues of around $10 million, which to me is extremely unlikely to happen. So again, this does not mean that Nano Dimension or that the NNDM stock is not a good buying opportunity or that they're not a good company fundamentally for the long term. It just means based on current projections and current fundamentals and current revenue generation that I personally would not buy into this stock, especially if you want the stock to appreciate over time. You would be better off jumping into this stock later and in the meantime investing into ETFs such as PRNT or even other 3D printing stocks for the short term. Again, I want to reiterate, this does not mean that Nano Dimension is a bad company. It's not very good in terms of opportunity cost. Why would I invest into Nano Dimension right now when it would take around 3 to 5 years to actually get to a sustainable revenue growth rate, when in that 3 to 5 years I could have used that capital elsewhere, made money, sold that company, and then invested into Nano Dimension once they actually prove themselves for profitability or their revenue generation. However, everyone has different strategies. That's just my thoughts and my personal opinions, and it really comes down to how we value the company, how we look at the future prospects of the company, the growth rate of the overall 3D printing market, as well as your own personal goals for this company. So I would love to hear your thoughts down below about Nano Dimension and what you think will happen to the NNDM stock price after their earnings report, which is coming up on the 31st of March. Subscribe if you are new, smash that like button, and I will see you in the next YT video.